Announced changes to photo radar in Alberta. Currently, today, only 27 municipalities in Alberta have photo radar programs. Those photo radar programs generated $220 million in revenue in the 2016-17 fiscal year. Following an independent review that already included public engagement in September 2018, new guidelines were introduced for photo radar in early 2019. These changes restrict the use of photo radar in some locations, such as transition zones and high-speed multi-lane roads. The review itself admitted that data is limited and inconsistent, and we need more strict requirements to ensure photo radar is being used for safety rather than revenue. The review also noted that photo radar operations in Alberta showed only a marginal contribution to traffic safety, despite Alberta having the highest number of photo radar devices per capita compared to other provinces. And remember, that's with only 27 out of about 350 municipalities participating in the photo radar program. Albertans need to have confidence that photo radar really is an effective way to keep them safe on the roads. If we are going to be serious about road safety, we need to refine our guidelines for things such as site selection, data collection, and system upgrades. We are committed to working with municipalities and police services to use photo radar as a tool to reduce collisions and injuries and ultimately to save lives. Government will be engaging with 27 municipalities and police services that currently operate the photo radar systems to understand how photo radar can be best used to increase traffic safety throughout Alberta. The engagement will gather information about how municipalities operate their photo radar program, but we will be looking at how to enhance data collection, standardize reporting, and improve site selection criteria to better focus on traffic safety. Additionally, we will be freezing in time the use of photo radar devices effective December 1st, 2019. This freeze will remain in place while we work with municipalities to refine guidelines and while we work with municipalities and police to collect better data on how photo radar is used. Once we have better, more consistent data, we will be in a position to make informed decisions about the future of photo radar in Alberta. The intention of this freeze is to analyze the information to determine whether photo radar is used as a safety tool as intended, as opposed to other uses. The freeze will ensure that municipalities and police services do not invest in new photo radar equipment or complete costly upgrades that may not be able to be used in the future. Albertans want to feel safe and secure while they're driving. It's obvious that photo radar generates income, but the focus should be on how it affects safety on the roads instead of how it can be used to skim a few extra dollars from Alberta drivers. Albertans do not want to be nickeled and dimed to pad government budgets. Let me be clear. There will still be photo radar on Alberta roads during this temporary freeze. Not more, not less, the same amount. But this freeze will maintain the status quo and put a hold on the deployment of new photo radar equipment. When the study is complete, we will have much more thorough and consistent data upon which to base our decisions going forward. These decisions will be based on safety, on decreases in collision rates, and making sure that it's not just a hidden tax. Albertans want a government that's responsible to them and reflects their priorities. They want safer roads, fewer collisions, and more consistent enforcement. And this freeze is the first step toward accomplishing that goal. We will be in touch with elected officials of these 27 municipalities to inform them of the freeze and to invite them to be part of this important work. And municipalities and police agencies that are currently in the process of making changes to their photo radar programs can complete those changes already begun. For example, if they've already purchased new devices but not installed them, we will allow them to be installed. But from this point forward, there will be no approval of new automated traffic enforcement equipment or technology. I want to again stress our number one priority is safety, and we need to ensure that photo radar is used to create safety and not simply as a revenue collecting device. The temporary freeze and engagement will allow us to properly examine photo radar with municipalities and work with them to determine the future of photo radar. And now I would like to introduce my friend and colleague, Minister Schweitzer, to say a few words. Oops. And I'll try to stand up while I do that.
Thank you, Minister McIver. And thank you so much for your remarks. As Minister McIver pointed out, we need to do a better job of collecting and analyzing the information that photo radar devices provide us. Although there is data available, it's a patchwork set of facts from 27 different municipalities. As Mr. McIver indicated, if we're going to get serious about improving road safety, we need to refine the guidelines for such things as site selection, data collection, and system upgrades. In order to do that, we need to put this freeze in place for photo radar devices. To be clear, while photo radar will remain in use on Alberta roads, no new photo radar devices can be used. As Minister McIver has explained, this freeze will allow us to better understand the current status of photo radar in the province. This includes how it's used and its impact on safety, while ensuring that we don't invest in costly new upgrades and equipment which may be unnecessary, redundant, or unusable. During the freeze, we'll be holding consultations with municipalities and law enforcement. And next year, I'll be hosting town halls about various justice-related issues. And I'd encourage Albertans that have concerns or interests or ideas around photo radar use to come participate in our town halls. It's too early to speculate what this move might mean for the future of photo radar in the province. However, it's obvious that photo radar does generate revenue, but the focus should be on how it affects public safety. We want to find ways to create safer roads, fewer collisions, and more consistent enforcement policies. And we think this freeze is the first step towards accomplishing that goal. Thank you very much. And Mr. McIver will be taking some questions.
Mr. McIver, I'm trying to understand the rationale for the freeze. If you look at the MMP report, it suggests it's not the number of the machines, but where they're used and how often they're used. For example, Edmonton has from 2016-17 was using 1/3 the devices that Calgary was, yet was collecting 3.6 million versus 2.6 million for Calgary, which suggests why not cap the hours of usage or something?
Well, the freeze is to capture as accurately as we can the data on how photo radar has been used so that we can use that data to make good decisions going forward. If we allow more equipment to go in and out of the system, then we're into a whole bunch of inconsistent data. We're hoping to get a good picture of how photo radar has been used, the locations where it's been used at, and compare that data to collision rates and other data that we get. And not all 27 municipalities, this is not a criticism because they haven't been asked to up till now, are collecting the data the same way, and not all 27, the police are collecting the data in the same way. So the report that was just done, actually one of the things it said is that the data we have isn't adequate. So the freeze is to give us a set of data that we can trust at the end of this so that we can say, this is how it's been used, these are the collision rates, this is what we think, what we now have some data about how we think it's affected Safeway, and put government in a position to make good decisions in the interest of Albertans.
But in the interim, I mean, you don't know what cities will do, but they might end up trying to make more from what they've got a freeze, so now they'll run more photo radar with existing machines. Why not? Would you consider putting some kind of a cap on the number of hours of usage along with this freeze while you're investigating?
No, we want to get a picture of what's been going on, and your idea is interesting. I'm not criticizing it, but we decided that first thing we need to do is understand what's been happening, why, and to do a better job of collecting data about what's happening and what effect it does or does not have on public safety, and hopefully put ourselves in a position to make good decisions in the interest of Albertans. Because as the previous report said, we actually don't have good enough data today to make as good a decisions as we'd like to make about this.
How long is the data collection period and how long is the freeze?
You know what, we'll get you details on that. I think the whole thing could take as much as 2 years, but there's a period of getting ready, and part of that period of getting ready is negotiating with the municipalities and the police on what data actually should be collected and how to collect it. I mean, some of the forms perhaps that the police and the municipalities are using may not include spaces to put the data that we need. So we want to prepare it, launch it, collect the data, and then evaluate the data. So you're looking at about 2 years, yeah.
But the previous government, they wanted to collect data and have traffic safety plans from police agencies and municipalities by March 2020. Why the change timeline?
It's the time we talked about it. And it's the time that we think that we need to take to get it right. I think if we make Albertans are pretty interested in this when they talk about is any conversation about photo radar, as I'm sure that both Minister Schweitzer and I will hear right after we do this today. We're going to get our email boxes will probably be full of opinions, both positive and negative, about photo radar. We want to get this right. We want to have a set of data that we think we can trust and make decisions that we think will be right.
You made a number of changes, some of them you cited off the top there, following the MAP report. So are you confirming that you're keeping all of those?
Yeah, yes, actually, we were, I think I've said in the past, and I'm happy to reiterate for you now, we actually support the NDP's review. We support the changes that they made about where photo radar can and cannot be used and the conditions under which should be used, and we have actually kept them in place. I think we've been quite upfront about that. And this is actually, interestingly enough, kind of an extension of what they were planning on doing. As somebody pointed out, it may not be on exactly the same timelines, but I think it's a continuation of the same work because we believe it's work Albertans want us to do.
Why do you think Alberta has so many more photo radar than other places, other jurisdictions? Why are we so photo radar enthusiastic here?
Isn't that a good question? I guess I don't really know the answer to that. There's two, and not to, I think your question's good, first of all, but second of all, there's two ways to look at it. One is that we've got more photo radar per capita than any other place. The other question that I'm kind of curious about, we may or may not get the answer, is why the other of the almost 350 municipalities, there's about only 27 using photo radar. Another interesting question would be, why aren't the other ones using it? So that's you raise as a subset, I think, of your question. That's an interesting question also that I don't know the answer to, but it's certainly interesting.
So your goal is to not have any more of these 300 plus municipalities take on photo radar? And also, is there particular new equipment that you're worried about coming in that's in the offing that you're trying to stop from coming in?
No, we're simply trying to not hurt municipalities. So we don't know what we're going to do after we're done this. We haven't. If we'd made the decision, we wouldn't do the survey. What we haven't decided. So in the future, if photo radar is going to be restricted in some way, we don't want municipalities with tough budgets investing money in equipment that they may not be allowed to be used to use in the future. We're trying to be fair with them.
I'm just sorry. We're just going to take a minute to go to the phones. Operator, can you please put through the first caller?
Rick Bell of the Calgary Sun, your line is open.
Good afternoon, Minister McIver and Minister Schweitzer. Let's be clear here. Depending on what happens with the, the review, are you prepared to, you're talking about improving the way photo radar is done. Are you prepared, depending on what the evidence says, to actually get rid of photo radar in Alberta, to ban photo radar in Alberta? The last time we attended a press conference, Brian Mason, the then transportation minister, talked about it being a cash cow that was going to be put down humanely. I don't hear any of that from you in your introductory remarks, so please tell Albertans, are you serious about putting the option of getting rid of photo radar on the table? Is it on the table, and how seriously on the table is it if it is on the table? Everything's on the table. And I think Minister Schweitzer is welcome to add to this, but I think we're going to go where the evidence leads us. If it's for safety, we're going to keep it. For revenue collection, if it's by simply only for revenue collection, we won't. But we don't want to presuppose where the evidence will take us. First, we're going to collect the evidence and then decide.
Yeah, that's fair.
Rick, do you have a follow-up question?
Oh, yes. Sorry, Ken. I just said that I think Minister McIver covered that well. I guess everything's on the table right now. We want to see what the stats have to show us. And again, the focus should be on public safety. And again, it simply can't be a cash cow. It has to be about public safety. So we want to get the sets of data. We want to be able to analyze it and make an informed decision.
And Minister McIver, supplementary, do you think photo radar has been used by municipalities as a cash cow?
Well, I can tell you this. Some Albertans that contact my office certainly think so. Other ones have a different opinion, but we certainly get lots of feedback into my office from Albertans that think it's a cash cow. So we're going to do some research and find out.
Mr. The Premier was the opposition leader when this report came out in February. We asked him about it. He said that he would keep photo radar in playground and school zones, but said, well, look, we'll go significantly further and constrain the municipalities that use this as a cash cow. So he wants to see, at least at that time, he wanted to keep it in schools and playground zones. Will you keep that, or are you going to, or is it, as you say, the evidence will take you where it takes you?
We'll go where the evidence takes us. You know, when,
Have it in schools and playgrounds, even though your leader had said in February he would keep it there.
well, I think there's if the leader wants to do that, but the leader's in favor of us getting the information too. And let's face it, I think most Albertans would agree that some of the most important places to protect pedestrians in particular are in playground zones and school zones, which is why we have playground zones and school zones. So to me, that's a pretty good place to where you could make the argument that it's about safety when you've got children that, you know, at different levels of maturity and awareness crossing. Nonetheless, we're going to do the study.
Minister Schweitzer, I had a question, a slightly different topic. Recently, your lawyers said in open court that changes are coming to the Election Finances Act. They said that recently, and I want to know if you could expand on that. And they implied, or they said, that it's going to narrow the scope of third-party, who is a third-party advertiser, and what they are. So can you tell us what is in store?
Right now, we're working on a broader package of electoral reform. We intend on bringing forward different ideas in 2020.
And why do you think it's necessary?
Again, we've heard from Albertans that changes may be necessary. Again, whether you talk to our constituency associations as well, there's an immense amount of burden that's placed at the local level. These are volunteer-driven organizations that quite often, sometimes they only have $5,000 or $10,000 in the bank, and they're provided with an immense amount of scrutiny. We're taking a look at that. We're listening to Albertans as well, and we'll have a package next year to bring forward.
So you're looking at lifting the cap on political donations at all?
No, that's not in the cards right now. I don't want to speculate and presuppose as to what the remainder of it will be. But again, I can answer that one directly.
What did you campaign on? What did the ACP campaign on as far as that goes?
Again, I mean, that
Campaign on any of this?
on different electoral.
On what you're proposing now?
I've made no proposals here today other than to comment about what we're doing here for.
Reform on advertising. Was there anything in your campaign book on that?
I believe the Premier's made different comments in the past. Again, the purpose of today's press conference is to talk about photo radar. We'll have a package next year regarding electoral reform generally.
I believe we have one more caller on the line. Operator, can you please put through the caller?
Our question comes from Rick Dolphin of the Western Standard. Your line is open.
Yeah, hi, ministers. This whole subject has been kicking around. I think the first time Brad Mason mentioned it was in fall 2016. They've done a study. They put guidelines in. I mean, how much more study do you have to do? Isn't this just a way of kicking a kind of controversial thing down the road by 2 years? I mean, the cities obviously don't want to get rid of this revenue. So isn't this just kind of a, putting it off?
Well, thank you. And as I tried to express, and I'll do it again for you in my remarks, the report that was done in 2018 actually admitted in the report that there's not enough data. Even in the report itself said this is our findings based on what we know, but there's not enough data to make as good a decision as we want. So we're going to go back and get that data.
Well, what kind of data? What kind of data is missing? I mean, specifically, give some examples.
Yeah, well, you know what? We need an apples-to-apples comparison, as Minister Schweitzer is just saying to me, because right now we're not collecting, even the data that we have isn't consistent. And again, let me repeat, this is not a criticism of the municipalities. They've never been asked to report consistently. So we're going to talk to them and the police services that are patrolling those 27 municipalities and negotiate a consistent set of data and who collects it and how it's collected, compile it, and then we'll have data that we hopefully can trust and make good decisions on. Where up till now, it's the data is a little bit random because different municipalities have been left to their own devices to collect data differently. And again, I have no criticism, but the fact is we think if we're going to make a better decision for all of Alberta, we need consistent data from the 27 municipalities that have been using it, and we hope that consistent data will lead us to better decisions for the future.
I have a question.
One last question. What have the guidelines? What effect have the guidelines that were imposed in February or March, whenever it was? What effect have they had on photo radar revenue for the two cities? Any idea?
Current on that? We haven't got anything current on that. I'm sorry to say. I can't tell you. Since the new rules were put in place, and this isn't data, this is just an example of information that comes to my office, as you might well imagine. People that have gotten photo radar tickets since then and are aware of the new guidelines felt free to email and call my office saying that a certain municipality isn't following the guidelines. But again, the whole idea now is to get better data so we can put guidelines in place, enforce them, and have Albertans understand what we hope will be a fair way of keeping them safe on the roads and one that they can trust.
Does Bill 20 apply to this? Bill 20 allows you, if passed, to take a bigger share of fine revenue, is that correct?
Yeah, the share of fine revenues will not be affected by what we're doing here.
Because it doesn't apply to...
It's a separate issue.
It's a separate issue.
These are other fines than these are...
Oh, no,
so now you take 27%, right?
Oh, sorry.
Will that change?
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, if you want to.
No, go ahead.
Under the budget, the revenue split between municipalities went from 26.7% to the province to 40% for the province.
Okay.
That is part of the budget for this year, and this is a separate issue as to how photo radar is used in the province of Alberta.
But right now, if this bill passes, you'll be taking 40% of photo radar revenue rather than 27%.
That's accurate, yes.
So does that kind of change things for you? I mean, you don't want photo radar, it's a cash cow, yet now you're taking a bigger slice of the cash.
No, listen, we're going to make sure the focus for photo radar is on safety. And as I think you rightly point out, that should a decision be made to have less photo radar, then I suppose you could argue, and you'd be right, the municipalities will get less revenue, and so will the government of Alberta. Both those things would be true in that case, but I don't want to presuppose what the decision will be, because we actually haven't made that decision yet.
We have another question.
From my colleague there?
Yes, I have a question on Hyperloop in Alberta. Will your government back the test pilot project to build this from Edmonton to Calgary?
I don't think there's any plans at this point to get involved in a Hyperloop between Calgary and Edmonton. I was at a infrastructure conference actually with Minister Panda in Toronto last week. There was a presentation on Hyperloop by a fellow that is hoping to have a live test. Abu Dhabi, I might not have it's a Middle Eastern country, and I apologize, I might not have the country right. I can get you the person's contact name after if you like. And they're hoping to have a live model built of a Hyperloop to try within about 3 years. But if you're going to say, we have no plans that I'm aware of to get involved in a Hyperloop between Calgary and Edmonton.
Proponents say that they were chatting with the NDP government about maybe a 10-kilometer stretch between, I think it was Pinoka and Olds or something like that. Would your government be interested in at least partnering or at least having a conversation with someone looking at this type of project here?
You know what? For me, it's not in my plans for transportation. My understanding and what I think I know is that a Hyperloop is very expensive. And I think if we can get data in 3 years out of this fellow that's hoping to do it on the other side of the world, that we should pay attention to that and try to get the data without putting Alberta taxpayers through the expense of building one. Should I get new information that I don't have now, I guess I'll consider it. But as of this day, not considering that, being part of building something in Alberta right away here. Not on the radar right now.
Minister, just a quick question. How much is this review going to cost taxpayers of Alberta over the next 2 years?
Not a lot. I know that's a terrible answer, and I apologize for that. But the fact is, we're going to talk to 27 municipalities. We'll probably be talking to anyways on a number of issues, and include the police services in those conversations. So
There will be collecting and analyzing the data.
yeah,
Presumably a report too.
you know what? I haven't got a number on that, and I apologize for that.
Minister, or are you going to contract it out to a third-party firm?
No, you know what? No, we're going to do it. These municipalities are our partners.
So it's an in-house.
I mean, we've got 2 ministers here that work with municipalities. We've got a minister of municipal affairs. Surely one of us or one of our staff can talk to the 27 municipalities that are important partners of ours and directly and get information, and we will.
If that's it, thanks everybody for coming.
Thanks.
You're welcome.